By some miracle, I passed my sophomore year. Okay, this is called Chapter 15, the Florida Shuffle. Back to going in and out of institutions. By some miracle, I passed my sophomore year. I'm not sure how. I hardly went to school. Summertime in the Bay Area is a lively time. All the high schoolers are free from the confines of their academic schedules, and college kids come back to visit in urban areas, and the nightlife scene flourishes during these months, which was great for me. One week I heard about a party at this preppy girl Maria's house on Harbor Island. Her parents were out of town, and talk about divine synchronicities, bro. This one's crazy. It sounded like a good time, and knowing how rich South Tampa kids were, I thought it would be a good little business trip. So I packed a bag with some drugs and called an Uber. When I walked in the door, the prim party goers, all dressed in their nice Hollister clothes, turned and stared for a second. I must have looked comically out of place. Wearing an Obama turned Rasta t-shirt, sagging shorts, I knew some of the kids in this crowd, and while they had heard I was a slimeball, they probably wrote it off as just a plug making his runs. In no time, I was wasted. I had no brakes, and neither did my bladder. While I was pissing in the bathroom, I glanced over at the mirror in the cabinet. Temptation tickled my drunken brain. I knew, and I was barred out. But I don't think I was drunk. I was barred out. I knew how preppy families love their prescription drugs, just like mine. I opened the cabinet and spotted a few orange prescription bottles. I knocked them off the shelf into my bag. The seal's broken now, I thought. As I opened the door, I scanned the empty rooms in the house for anything valuable I could fit in my backpack. I rummaged through dressers, closets, bathroom cabinets, clearing out bottles of pills, laptops, cameras into my backpack. Once I made all of my rounds, I shuffled out in front of the door nonchalantly. After I left, I hitched a ride from a kid named Dan far into North Tampa to John Seidel's house. John was a massive white dude from Philly who always had some crazy lore to drop about his times in Philly. When I got there, I knocked on his door. A loud voice yelled from a Philly accent, "Yo, boys, come on in. Let me see who that is." The door opened and John poked his head out. "Yo, Connor, what's up, motherfucker?" he said, mouthful of cheese in his mouth as he stuck his hand out. I dapped him up. "Yo, what's up, man? I brought something to trade." I unzipped my bag and I showed him a pile of orange prescription bottles. "Oh shit, what you got in that, John?" He looked down in the bag, eyeing all the contents. "All right, bro, I got something for you." He looked back inside. Hey, we're about to go back into the woods for a bit and have a fire. You want to come hang for a bit?" I agreed. With his friends, John and I made our way back into the woods for about 10 minutes until we reached a fire pit with a few chairs spread around it. We got a small fire going and sat around it, and John told me some absurd story about prostitutes in Philly. You never know with him whether they were real or epic street myths. It didn't matter though, because these stories were always entertaining. After now I'm starting to believe that they all were true, because he was a little older than me. Hearing because they were always so synchronized. I can't remember any off the top of my head, but he'd say something where it's just how the fuck did all of those pieces line up like that? It was too good to be true, but that's how God works. After his tale, John handed me some pills. "Careful with those," he said. "Those motherfuckers will knock you out." I took them and they kicked in. I gazed into the crackling fire. Connor! 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 A stern voice called my name over and over with a bright LED flashlight pointed in my face. This is how I woke up in the middle of the night after the party at Maria's and after leaving John's house. I had passed out in my bed at my mom's place. I don't know how the fuck I got there. Now, early in the morning, she was standing over me with two police officers. "Connor, you gotta come with me, buddy," one of the officers said. I stretched and I rolled around in my bed, spinning from the alcohol and the pills. What? What are you talking about? The cop pulled the blankets off the bed. "Come on, kid. You gotta come with me. You've been Marchman Acted. You're going in for an evaluation." I rolled out of the bed. "Man, are you f***ing kidding me?" I backed in the corner of my room. The officers surrounded me, cuffed me, and began walking me out of the house. I thrashed my body, trying to break the grip of their arms. "Fuck y'all," I said. Nothing I did mattered now. It was too late to escape. Once again, I was in the possession of somebody else. As the two men walked me down to the front door, my mom watched solemnly from the frame. "Sorry, honey, you did this to yourself," she called out. "I love you, but you're a menace to society." That was the day I started the Florida Shuffle, a super fun court-ordered dance across various institutions. I didn't know it yet, but for the next few years, I would be caught in constant cycle of dealing with the repercussions of my actions and the persona that I had created behind them. I had been institutionalized before, but from here on out, my mother could not save me like she did from Carlbrook. Now I would be having to report to judges and to government officials, and my actions alone wouldn't prove whether or not I was a threat to myself or others. Ironically, my judge for this case was the same judge judge I had for the drug pretrial intervention a few years back, his name Dr. Judge Espinoza, was a judge of the 13th Circuit Court of Florida. He had a daughter who overdosed on drugs. I would come to know him well in my youth and in my adulthood. Anytime I got into trouble, thank God, bro, bless Judge Espinoza at this point. Like, I hated him back then, but yo, bless that man, bro. Anytime I got into trouble, bless that man. Never even thought about that until right now. He's the guy that basically hands out second chances, and then when you're like past return and need to go to prison, then they fucking send you there. But if it wasn't for him, I would be a felon right now. So thank you, Judge Espinoza. Ignore all of those songs I made about wanting to kill you. And if you want, somehow figure out how to contact me and I can send you the SoundCloud where they're still hosted. After seeing me for a second time, Judge Espinoza determined that I needed a little bit more attention and sent me off to JARF, or the Juvenile Addiction Receiving Facility. It is a short-term Marchman Act receiving facility where adolescents are placed until a longer placement is found, as in like a 6 to 12 month program. When I pulled up, I was not having it. I had done the whole admissions routine enough times. Now, while I was agitated, a part of me was just beginning to like this jailbird lifestyle. I found a certain level of comfort and predictability in being locked up in guarded facility. Maybe because I was really believed that that's just who I was and I belonged there. I did the strip search with this BHT named Clyde. He was a nerdy black dude with glasses and an afro. I gave him a hard time. I walked in, took my clothes off, sat in the chair, unamused, probably doing this for the 1000th time. Lift your balls and cough, he said. Suck my d-, I replied, grabbing my balls, flinging them around. Then I spun around and gave him a full moon and spread my butt cheeks. You want to see my butt too? I'm sure he had plenty to talk about in the break room after that one. Poor guy. After that, I met with a doctor who reviewed my previous diagnosis I received and told me what was wrong with me and prescribed me drugs. After being dressed in a blue jumpsuit, I was led into yet another default day room. It was a white with 20 chair, few cubicle, and TV playing with the most boring, agreeable shit ever. There were, however, two things in this day room that caught my eye. The first was there were girls, and the second was a massive tank of a redneck white boy hounding his fists onto the BHT. He was yelling about some nonsense. Each time he yelled, his double chin shook with rage. Look at these idiots, I thought, while observing the BHT get beat up by a teenager. After Jason calmed down, I befriended him. We spent about 4 weeks together in JARF, flirting with the girls and in the day room, pissing off the staff members. And after 4 weeks, the members came and told me that I was being transferred to Thono. Thono is a short for Thono Assassa Youth Residential Treatment Program, which was a court-ordered program in Thono Assassa, Florida. When all the other people at JARF heard that I was heading there, they all shrudded or went, ooh, shit. This place has a reputation for being one of the most ratchet facilities in the area. It was the last stop for juveniles before they get locked up with the big dogs. This, however, did not get to me. Whenever one of my JARF peers made a comment about it, I said something like, man, I don't give a fuck, I'll fuck them up. In my comparison to JARF, I arrived at Thono with the relatively non-antagonistic attitude. I wanted an easy in and out. When I first walked into the living quarters, everyone eyed me, fresh meat. Noticing the attention I received, I told them, look y'all, none of y'all better fuck with me. I'm just doing my thing here, I'm chilling. Within 2 weeks of saying that, I got kicked out. While I wasn't looking for trouble at Thono, it found me. In the process of trying to trade my clothes for some spice, which is a drug, I pissed off this Mexican boy. Every night after that, during his cleaning duty, he came by my room and spat on the floor and said, you cracker, I'll fucking kill you, jit. Internally, a part of me was deeply saddened by his seemingly reasonless hatred for me and feeling unsafe in my living situation, which was traumatizing, which I've had to go through that in jail and all sorts of other shit as well as an adult. Another part of me enjoyed the excitement, exactly, and the freshness of the drama. On the outside, however, I maintained a hard-edged street persona. Fortunately, Jason, the massive redneck from JARF, wound up being my roommate at Thono, and then, because he was sent there too, and he wasn't going to let anything happen to us. Anytime that Mexican kid came by, he'd chuckle and say, I'd like to see you come and do something, bitch. One night, the boy came in with a few friends. They tried to beat us with pillowcases of books. Jason leapt up out of bed. Yeah, they tried to beat us up with pillowcases of books. Jason leapt up out of bed, beat the living out of them. Dude, he was like, I don't know why anyone would try to with Jason, bro, but they were really trying to fuck with me, and then Jason saved my ass. After 2 weeks of living like this, one day during lunch, the Mexican kid slithered up to our table. I could see slickness in his eyes. He says, I'm gonna need you to slide me those mashed potatoes on my plate real quick, he said, holding his tray down. Anger coursed through my veins like diesel. I looked over at Jason. He looked back at me and nodded very subtly, conveying his support. Oh, yeah, okay, I can do that, I said. Let me get that for you real quick. I scooped the mashed potatoes with my hands and slapped him in the face with it. Mashed potatoes flew flew everywhere. Creamy thwack sounded off. Everyone stared and some had to wipe their faces. The Mexicans' table full of boys all got up and rushed over. Jason scooted his tray away and got up from his lunch. The Mexican boy, still stunned by the shock, wasn't moving. I threw a punch and connected with his face again. Then he hit me in the stomach. Jason was whirling all the boys around, and because he's that big, he was literally fucking like whirling the boys around. The staff, who most of the time were uninterested in our affairs and either slept or read, rushed over to break it all up. As a consequence for my potato brawl, I was removed from Thono for gang activity, although I wasn't in a gang, and I was sent back to JARF for another 8 weeks until they could find me a bed at another facility or send me to jail. But thankfully because of my situation being harassed like that, they were like, okay, like you were kind of defending yourself, so let's take you to a place that's a little more safe. So during this time I met Flacco. He came shortly after I returned. He was a light-skinned pretty boy who's in jail right now. All the girls adored him. He constantly did this thing where he would raise one eyebrow, purse his lips and say, I'm pretty as hell, but I'll still fuck your ass up. We connected through our sense of humor and similar experiences. We would always talk shit together and laugh. We spent hours yapping about girls, drug stories, and other tales of wild youth. From a third person's perspective, our conversations probably appeared comical. We were constantly dapping each other up and rolling our tongues like grrr to affirm when one another said something funny, true, or savage. While the two of us were clowns, we kept out of trouble. We were trying to part out of the chaotic crowd and came into the facilities feeling like we were not a part of the chaotic crowd who came into the facilities feeling like they had something to prove in terms of like dominance or whatever, like wanting to fight people. We got on well with the staff, sure, we goofed off, but we were always trying to make the best of our time there. This round at JARF was good fun. In JARF, we had a Narcotics Anonymous meeting twice a week. Sadly, those meetings were a little unorganized due to JARF's short stay length. Residents didn't get to remain long enough to form the necessary connections with the people to make a positive change. There was one guest speaker, however, whose story really touched me. The middle-aged man stood in front of us, freshly showered in a button-down. His clean appearance mirrored the polished sparkle in his eyes. He told us how he had been prescribed medications from a young age and gotten into recreational drugs and began to deal them when to feed his addictions, resulting in a rough life of crime until he got clean. After finishing his life story, he looked at all of us and smiled. Just because you have a year of unhealthy behaviors behind you doesn't mean you cannot change now, he said. My heart clenched as the tears welled up in my eyes. It had been a long time since I had heard somebody's story that actually resonated so closely with mine. I felt freed from the chaotic sense of being an outsider. Here's a man who had gone through the same thing that I did, and he won. When the session concluded, I approached him to speak. I know exactly what you're talking about, I said. I feel your pain. He looked down into my eyes compassionately. You do? Yeah, I said. My life has been very similar to yours. I went on to share some of the details about my life. He listened and nodded. When I finished, he said, "What about now?" I raised my eyebrows attentively. "That was your life, but what about now?" he asked. "I've been considering getting clean in here," I said. "I'm young, I have time." It flashed by, he nodded. "Don't wait too long." "I won't," I said. "Best of luck," he said, walking off to get a coffee. In the following weeks, I always looked forward to his visits and spoke to him every time that he came. While it would be quite some time before I really wanted to get clean, the things he said and his understanding gaze planted a seed in me. I was beginning to feel a little bit less isolated in the world. In my second go around at JARF, I was passed on to Coastal Compass, a behavioral health facility in Punta Gorda, Florida. Luckily, I didn't go alone. I had the company of my dear friend Flacco, who was sent shortly after I was. I remember leaping up ecstatically from the day room in the chairs the day that he walked in. "Flacco," I yelled. "That's my motherfucking dog. What's good, bruh?" He ran over to me, leaving the health tech in charge of him in the dust. "Oh shit, look who the it is," he said, greeting me with a hug. At this facility similar to jail, I lived in a room full of 50 boys, stuck in a tight-knit bunk bed back to back to back to back. Flacco and I would wake up hype as hell in there, yelling things like, "Yo, rise and grind, it's another day, motherfucker." There was also a common room, which was much like the bland room with the TV at JARF. In addition to the living accommodations, there was a cafeteria, a basketball court, and a few portable schools. Unlike Carlbrook, there was no teachers. Instead, we received our education on our computers, which only had access to a single digital learning site and Google Images. Like that, the rest of my academic career, I did not give a I would sit there on the computer, open up pictures, and draw. Some of the dopest pieces of art that I've actually ever created came out of Coastal Compass, including a psychedelic goat filled with sacred geometry and a gangster version of Goku. My artistic endeavors carried me through this time. I also used my artistic capabilities to show appreciation and love for my peers. One time I drew a beautiful sketch of Flacco. When I showed it to him, he raised his eyebrows, sucked his teeth, and said, "Damn, I'm a pretty ass little young." Unfortunately, Flacco didn't really have the freedom to benefit from his good looks at Coastal Compass. You couldn't really interact with the girls, except from across the room in the hallway. There was a giddy black hair girl named Haley, who I was very attracted to. The two of us would exchange notes, mouth things in passing, and communicate through our eyes at a full distance. We traded numbers before discharging and began a long-distance relationship after making an effort to visit each other when we would. She eventually developed a fentanyl addiction, and one time I visited her after she jumped out of a moving car on the highway in an attempt to steal some. Later, after we dated, her addiction stole her life. Compared to Carlbrook, the staff at Coastal Compass were ratchet. There was one BHT, Fred, that Flacco and I constantly joked with. Fred was a big, overweight black man with a good sense of humor, but even had his limits. One time, he was annoyed with us on the way out. He said he was walking in the common room and he said, "Connor, Flacco, see you, I'm out." "Where you going?" I asked Fred, but we would always talk to him in his accent. "Connor, Flacco, see you, I'm out." "Hey, Fred, where you going, Fred?" Fred stopped midway through the door. "Tonight, I'm going to have fun with my lady." "Come on, Fred, you ain't got no lady," Flacco said, grinning with the mischief. "Yeah, Fred, what you talking about? What kind of fun? Can you even see your little ding-a-ling down there?" I added. I puffed up like a fish. "Man, y'all kids, y'all wanna fuck with Fred? I've been here for about 20 years. I ain't never seen nobody like y'all two. Y'all are some motherfucking disgraces. Oh my mama, I ain't playing. Y'all gonna leave this motherfucker right here and get right back to it. Start using them drugs, fucking them hoes, being the scum of the earth. Then get your ass locked up in prison. I'll tell you this here, huh? You ain't never gonna have no good ladies." I walked out chuckling with the door past him. Alright. Chapter 16. One Toe in the Water of Healing.